Hello everybody, and welcome to my War Thunder Ground Forces Tips and Tricks series. Today we'll be looking at some settings, tech trees, research, modules, and crew. To start out with, we're just going to do settings. First of all, we're going to go to the game options menu. Here you can see tabs. I've got a bunch of different stuff. For the most part, what we are going to be looking at in this first tab is down here we have the measurements of speed and distance and altitude and whatnot. This can be toggled into metric or imperial. There are some other things in here that you really don't need to worry about. However, the main two things you should find in here is the player's tank destruction replay. You want to turn that on, and the grass and tank sight, you want to turn that off. Basically what this means is that when you go into your sniper view or binocular view, there will be no grass. It's easier to see targets, and you will do better in at shooting weak points and whatnot. Next, we're going to go to graphics, play around with them, see what you like, what you don't like. A lot of times, I'm not really a big shadows guy. I like to turn the shadow quality down just because I like to see them, but they're not a big thing for me. And they do take up a lot of graphics power, so it is always what I do is the first thing I lower is shadow quality. The ideal is to get 50 plus FPS. This will allow when people are spamming machine guns or spamming rockets at you, you can still get decent FPS and still, FPS I mean frames per second. You can still get decent FPS and it won't be a big deal. 30 FPS is playable, but again, it can get pretty choppy at times, and I'd really suggest just lowering it down if you have to, if you're playing at 30. Next, we got the interface. This has got a bunch of HUD stuff and whatnot to play with. The main things you want to look at here is you can turn off chat. There it is, chat messages. You can get them only from team and squad. And you can turn off chat. You can chat censor. And you want your indicators and these on. These last three. As many indicators as you can. And you want to just turn as much stuff that makes sense, like airspeed doesn't really matter unless you're flying planes, but you do want to hit camera, you do want destroyed modules, you want, some of these things, fuel indication and ammo indication, temperature indication. You want as much of that on as you can. Sound, voice chat, internet, radio, and social. Do whatever you got to in that, but I'm not really going to go over it because they're kind of self-explanatory and they vary from computer to computer and headset to headset and whatnot. So deal with them as you must. Controls, play with them. If you don't like a control setup, don't use it, change it. You can go to the wizard to help play with that kind of stuff. The big ones to know is here you want to do the show the status of your vehicle. Because that can show you an x-ray view when you're in the game of what's damaged and what's not. Instructor, I like to turn all these off, but you don't really need them because they're for planes. For tank control, you want the zoom, sniper mode, repair, rangefinder, which this rangefinder can only really be used in realistic and simulator battles. If you're just playing arcade, which is what most of this tutorials will be on, is just arcade battles. Rangefinder isn't very useful, but if you're not playing on arcade, rangefinder is very, very useful if you have one in the tank. Under view controls, you want to look for mouse look. This allows you to look around without changing where your gun barrel is facing or doing anything like that. It's very nice to have. Other than that, and binoculars. Same thing with the rangefinder. Binoculars are only really useful in realistic and simulator battles because you need to pick out targets. They're very useful in those battles, and I really suggest you use them if you play in those battles. Otherwise, they're not very useful. Miscellaneous and replays. Look through them if there's something you want to use or you need. do that, but there isn't really much in there that really matters as far as buttons that you need. Replay, same thing. Look through them if you want to use them, but nothing really matters. Also, remember to, after when you're done with all of the key bindings that you want, go down here and hit export to file. This will allow you to save the key bindings so that in case they ever reset or you need them for some later thing, you can save them. You can also, if they ever are reset, you go to import and you can import those key bindings back into your game. These are really will save you so much time doing this, trust me. Make sure you do it. That's it for really controls and game options. Next, let's look at tech trees. And the British, who just came out, I don't have much of their army, so we can look at that. When you see this little research button, we can look at the tech tree. There's army and aviation. Japan only has aviation. All the other nations have an army and an aviation tab. When looking at these, they are formed in lines. These little red or gray, bluish, whatever, arrows mean that these tanks lead to the next one. Tanks do not go sideways. They may start, such as the Russians, they may start at tier 2. Holy crap, that's a tier 2 now. Wow, I did not know that. That sucks. The ZIS-30 is now a tier 2. That's unfortunate. But some trees will start at tier 2. Other ones start all the way at the top. Basically, you have to unlock and buy each tank in a successive tree to get to the next tank. So let's say I research this Matilda. To get it, I have to first buy the Crusader Mark II, the Crusader Mark III, and then buy the Matilda Mark II. I can't just buy the Matilda Mark II right away. Similarly, if I want to get the Valentine, I'd have to get a Tetrarch, the Valentine, and then the Valentine 11. Every single tree, every single tier, there are 5 of them. To get to the next tier, you have to research and buy 6 tanks. This includes premium vehicles. So for this first tier, I was able to get the A13s, both of them, the Crusader, the Tetrarch, the T17, and this premium vehicle. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 somewhere. Is there another one? 3. Oh yeah, I counted wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why am I counting wrong? There's 6 somewhere. I don't know, whatever. I can't count today. But you need 6 in each one to move on to the next tier. Now, because of this, as we see, I don't have these 2 vehicles, but I need them to move on to the 3rd tier, because I would be able to, in the lines I have, be able to research only 2, 3 vehicles. I need 6, so I would need at least 2 of these to move on to the 3rd tier. Because of that, it's really good to plan out what tanks you want and what tanks you need to get to do that. If, for instance, what you really want is the Tortoise, that means that you can pretty much grind out this line and this line, and you would be able to get every single tank, and besides tier 1, you would be able to get enough tanks to get on to the next one until you got to tier 3. Then you would need to either buy premium vehicles and maybe do the anti-aircraft line, or you'd have to do this line, because you need 6 vehicles to get on to the next tier. It isn't suggested you go after 1 tank. Usually there's 3 tanks that are the best in every single faction. For instance, the Russians have a T10M, the IS-4M, and the T-54. The Germans, they have the Maus, the Leopard, and supposedly the Jagdpanzer 4.5. I would almost rather just use one of the anti-aircraft guns before I use that thing. The Americans have the M60, the M103, and the T92 or something. I haven't played them, so I don't know. But you get the gist. That's tech trees. Planning stuff out can save you a lot of time down the road. Next, we're going to look at modifications. Modifications can be found right here underneath the armor and x-ray views. Your tank has a whole bunch of modifications it can get. A brand new tank probably have one. T80. T70, I probably haven't played that thing either. Yep, brand new tank will look like this. To get to the next tier, unlike the tech tree, you have to get 2 modifications instead of 6 because there's only 4. So what that means is that to get to tier 2, you have to buy, let's say, the tracks and the first ammunition. To get to tier 3, you have to buy the brake system and the adjustment of fire. Tier 4, you have to buy the elevation mechanism and filters, etc., etc. There's only really 2 main modifications that you really need on every single tank, and that's parts and the FPE, the fire prevention something equipment. That's what it is. This will allow you to repair your tank outside of a repair circle, outside of a cap circle, and FPV allows you to stop fires, because otherwise they will burn you down. There's no way to stop them without it. With these 2, you pretty much have enough to deal with any vehicle that the tank can normally fight. Other modifications I suggest is ammunitions, depending on the tank. That's, there's an asterisk behind that. Every single tank, the engine, transmission, and filters really help. They all add horsepower and allow you to drive faster. Adjustment of fire is really good because it will decrease spread, both vertical and horizontal. Horizontal drive and elevation mechanism will decrease spread horizontally and vertically, obviously between the 2. The other ones, get as you need. Artillery support is nice, but it's not really required for any tank, but it helps out a lot with the light tanks who can't really deal with heavier vehicles otherwise, such as the T70, which really wouldn't be able to deal with much. Lastly, what we're going to look at is crew. The crew, there are still the 5 tabs, like I said in the anatomy vehicle. We saw the crew members, but there's also a bonus tab called qualification. Let's look at T70 crew. The first crew is the driver, then the gunner, tank commander, tank loader, and radio operator. Your driver, the most important thing is tank driving. This will affect how you change gears, how well you accelerate, how well you decelerate, how touchy you are with your controls. It really just makes driving better. The gunner has targeting and range finding. Targeting will allow you to move the gun into the perfect place or where you're aiming much quicker. Range finding works really well in arcade battles because it allows that little magical cross to find the target more accurately, and in simulator battles it increases your accuracy at certain distances. Tank commander, it doesn't really have anything vital, but leadership is always a good thing to have because it will increase your other crew members' main skills, such as tank driving or the targeting / range finding, by 10% when it gets maxed out. Tank loader has weapon reloading, which is really useful. I highly suggest you get your tank loader maxed out. Radio operator has radio communication. Basically, radio communication is, if you see the mini-map, all the little stuff, specifically on arcade battles, all the tanks that are found on the mini-map are, you can detect more tanks that your allies find through radio communication. So if you have a really low radio communication, you can only talk to tanks that are apparently 250 meters away. If you have the top, you can talk with them that are 500 meters away. So yeah, that's radio communication. It helps you with situational awareness, and it is actually fairly useful. But it's absolutely not necessary, and really, if I had to lose one skill that was not, it would be this one. This one is nice, but it's not necessary. Qualification, this you can add bonuses to your tank. They stack on top of what you normally do. So if you have tank driving all the way up and you get the bonus to expert, your tank driver will get the 5 plus the extra from the expert. You do have to get a certain crew level before you can upgrade these. Some tanks require level 100, some tanks require like level 20. It just depends on the tank. The other ones that are pretty much between all of them are keen vision, field repair, agility, and vitality. Keen vision, field repair, and agility are all averaged throughout your crew. So by adding keen vision to only your tank commander and gunner, like I did here, I didn't know that really doesn't do much. It's much better to even it out between all the crew because the average of them is used. Field repair is the exact same way. It's best to just average it out between all of them. Agility, same thing. Keen vision helps you detect tanks. Field repair helps you quicken your repair time and lower your maximum repair time. Agility lets your crew members move around the tank faster. And then there's vitality. Vitality is the most useless of all of the bonuses. Essentially, all vitality does is if your member is shot by one .30 caliber bullet, which is the smallest machine gun round that one can use, they will survive it. 1. If they're shot with 2, they're probably going to die. With a high vitality, if they're shot in the arm or leg with a 50 cal, they can survive. What this means is that vitality, if you are even shot with a 50 cal, you die. We're firing tank guns that are 76 millimeters, or bigger, or smaller, whatnot. The smallest ones, though, are 20 caliber anti-aircraft guns, or 20 millimeter anti-aircraft guns. Those things will kill any driver or any member of your tank in one shot. While it does help against a little bit of the spalling and a little bit of the small shrapnel, tank vitality is something that once you get past about 3, you can stop. There's no point in going farther until you have every single other crew skill maxed out. I found that having a certain number of people, such as the loader and the gunner, with a high vitality is useful, but having everyone else with high vitality is, not really necessary. Only your loader and your gunner and maybe your driver should you worry about your vitality. Everyone else, don't worry about it that much. It's not that big of a deal. So that's pretty much everything for today. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time.